So our first topic is about the report of the cholera epidemic in the Philippines. So one report of the cholera epidemic in the Philippines called epidemic, why it's not called pandemic instead. So many were confused between the two. So on the left side, we can see the difference between epidemic and the pandemic. The epidemic is an outbreak of disease that affects many in a population and begins to spread rapidly, while the pandemic is more larger of the epidemic. Since the outbreak only happens in the Philippines or affects a large number of people within community, population, or region, it was called epidemic. But if the virus or disease spread across national borders to different countries and continents of the world, it will be called pandemic. So, we can see the difference between the two because the pandemic affects more larger and the epidemic is more smaller and only in a. Since we talk about the pandemic and the epidemic, our situation right now is a pandemic already. The COVID-19 were epidemic first way back 2019 when it happens in the country of China, and then later March, as I remember, the World Health Organization declared it as pandemic since the virus spreads across the borders of countries and to the continents of the world. So the WHO or World Health Organization is the one in charge if what is the current situation, either it's epidemic or a pandemic. So the cholera outbreak in the Philippines, the World Health Organization declared it as a epidemic. While right now, what happened right now is that the World Health Organization announces our situation that it is a pandemic since the spread is more larger than the epidemic. Now, I'm going to share to you the cholera outbreak in Caraga, Davao Oriental, in the country of Cameroon, and the first cholera pandemic. 6 people have died due to the cholera outbreak in the Caraga town in Davao Oriental, which started on January 31, 2022. The provincial government has launched a massive emergency health response to address the ongoing cholera outbreak in the municipality of Caraga. Karen Ludiloso, the provincial information officer, said the provincial health office started receiving reports of the residents experiencing diarrhea on January 29, wherein most patients had experienced symptoms such as loose bowel movement, vomiting, and stomach ache. She said the Department of Health has recently confirmed from submitted test samples that the diarrhea outbreak was caused by cholera. Health authorities have become very concerned about the cholera outbreak that is sweeping the country. Nearly 4,600 cases have been reported nationwide with 156 deaths. The number of reported cases doubled in just 1 week. In the central region, cases increased from 1,001 to 1,564 in 1 week, with 73 deaths. With the coming rainy season, the situation may deteriorate further due to contamination of water supply. The first cholera pandemic emerged out of the Ganges Delta with an outbreak in Jessore, India in 1817. Stemming from contaminated rice, the disease quickly spread throughout most of India, modern-day Myanmar, and modern-day Sri Lanka by traveling alongside routes established by Europeans. By 1820, cholera had spread to Thailand, Indonesia, killing 100,000 people on the island of Java alone, and the Philippines. The Thailand and Indonesia, the disease made its way to China in 1820 and Japan in 1822 by way of infected people on ships. It also spread beyond Asia. In 1821, British troops traveling from India to Oman brought cholera to the Persian Gulf. The disease eventually made its way to European territory, reaching modern-day Turkey, Syria, and southern Russia. The pandemic died out 6 years after it began, likely thanks to the severe winter in 1823 to 1824, which may have killed the bacteria living in the water. Mostly of the causes of the outbreak were the same. Some were from contaminated water, brought by the infected person from another place to another, and the moist food. The cholera epidemic in the Philippines were most closely in the contaminated food because the ingredients of the food served to the people of Binyan were smuggled infected food from the quarantine, and later the cook also died in cholera with 80 more Binyan were infected. From my research, the three causes of cholera outbreak I mentioned were always the reason of the outbreak in a specific, then it spreads out. The common solution of the outbreak were putting the infected person in a quarantine, even those who were not, till the cause of the outbreak were found, to minimize the spread. In the study says if the water were the one that contains the disease, the heavy rains can only help to wash it out. Then to those infected, the antibiotics and anti-cholera were given to cure the patients. Afraid of going to school, the contaminated water, afraid of being affected, and all living things were dying. It affected me in such a way I lost confidence in school cleanliness maintenance, especially in the water and sewage system. Most rural schools that has poor hygienic system overlook the importance of such in their premises that before the administration realized it, it's already late and mostly kids already been struck with cholera bacteria in their system. Some unfortunately ended in fatality. And as a student, I will not go back to the school that the cholera outbreak has been found. So, why would I risk myself? Why would I risk my health in going back to school if the virus or the disease started in that area? And it affected me on not only as a student but also as a youth in terms of health and security. I would normally expect that the school or the local government unit has already prioritized this issue as one of the main concerns. Clean water and sewage systems should have a constant inspection by the local health office of the or the local health department in this bacteria Vibrio cholerae causing cholera is a microscopic and no way a human eye can see or a normal person can detect. The issue involves scientific invention. I would expect that the LGU, especially the health department, will prioritize the maintenance, prevention, and solution of this matter, and the school should disseminate information how to avoid cholera outbreak. Lastly, as a student and as a youth, I hope this not happen as it affects everyone, not only humans but all living things.